to everyone who's joined us today. Again, I'm Alex Beatty, divorce prep coach, aka the divorce planner. I help people prepare in advance of a separation or a divorce so they save time and money, make smart choices, and create their best next chapter, all while helping you address the emotional side of the process as well as the business. My guest today is one of my absolute favorites. Josephti Cruz is a CDFA and wealth management advisor. She has her own firm that she is one of the founding partners of, The Wealth Garden. She oversees $77 million in assets. The girl has got it going on. In addition to not only being a professional in this world, and previously, her credits read like a who's who of New York financial institutions, whether it was working with JP Morgan or TIAA before starting her own endeavor. The most important thing you really need to know about her is she's a mom who went through a divorce. So she really gets it on a cellular level, what you're going through. Josephti, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me again, Alex.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no. This is a really important conversation. The statistics around women and divorce and money are shocking, right?
Yeah.
40% of women fall into poverty after a separation or a divorce. That is according to the Divorce Gap, which was put out by The Atlantic, as well as a London-based financial institution. So we know the numbers are real, and depending on where you are in your life cycle, when you're going through a divorce as a woman, a lot of us have made huge sacrifices in terms of our work, our potential earning, our potential retirement, and all those things really need to be taken into account when you're going through the divorce process, as well as what the value of assets are, really having an understanding of what that means,
Right.
So that when you are negotiating, you're not just doing it to be able to sustain the next 5 months. We're talking about being able to see things through the lens of what I like to call the 5-5-5 rule. How's this going to affect me in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, and beyond? So to that, working with a CDFA or understanding what a CDFA does is critical, right? Because the stakes could not be higher. I will say today's questions, which I have jotted down and I'll have to look down and read, I got such a great response through my newsletter subscribers who emailed me from last week's newsletter and really helped me craft this week's questions. So without further ado, I'm just going to kind of dive in and get going. And for anybody who's joining us, if you have a question, don't hesitate to drop it into the comments and I'll try to get to it as best as possible. But I think the first question, and I like to think of this as like CDFA 101, like ask a CDFA. So many people discover way too late that they need a CDFA, right? So at what
I discovered too late. Yeah.
Can you share that really quickly? Because I think it's important for everybody to know. It's like you went through this divorce process before. You were, by the way, you were in finance. You weren't a CDFA yet. And this is part of what, propelled you to get that credential. Go ahead.
So I figured since I'm already a financial professional, I was fine. I could figure out the finances myself in the property division. And my ex-husband, for better or worse, was pretty passive about the whole thing. So he let me do everything, right? And at one point we were talking about, okay, but do we know how to properly divide this without ripping me off? That's what he was saying. I was like, well, we can hire a forensic accountant, but I don't really think we're at that income level that's needed. But I didn't know what a CDFA is. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that they existed. But a CDFA basically is the number cruncher on a divorce team. So a lawyer does legal stuff. Okay, so they know basics of divorce finances. And then a CDFA knows the financial part of a divorce and knows the basics of the legal stuff. So if you get both of them together, that's a powerhouse team. If you only have one or the other, you might be missing something.
Yeah. Which is exactly what happened to you, which is why you went into this, which I love. Anytime people come from a personal place, myself included, of working in niche, bringing that passion and that insight is really important, as opposed to, people who don't have that actual, experience. It's a different animal. It doesn't take away from other people's credentials, but it's really different. It's the difference between being a certified architect and just being somebody who likes architecture. It's Like, you're going to miss all of the different outlets in your plan. You're going to miss crown molding. You're going to forget to put lighting in. And that's why you need a professional.
I voluntarily gave money away.
Yeah.
I think that's, that was the thing that I learned from. I voluntarily gave money away because I missed something.
Yeah.
My consulting attorney gave me the wrong financial information.
Yeah.
So based on that incorrect information, because she's a legal person, not a financial person, I gave money away.
Yeah. Which, you know what? I don't want anybody leaving any money
Yeah.
on the table during a divorce, right?
Yeah.
It's like the goal should be an equitable split, but you can't actually do that without educating yourself. And to that, like, at what point in the divorce process should someone ideally bring you in a CDFA? And what are the most costly mistakes you've seen people make by not coming to you at the appropriate time?
I mean, you bring them in as early as possible, right? So when you have all your documents, I would say if you're really trying to save money, try to prep your documents yourself or with Alex. Okay, so that's what you can do for yourself. And then once you have a complete financial picture, then yeah, try to bring in that CDFA to talk about settlement options, property division, separate property tracing, all that stuff. And I would say the most costly financial mistake, it's been happening a lot actually. People reach out to me after they've already partially settled their assets.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I already got, X. I got $500,000 from this house. What else do I need to do? And it's like, well, I don't know if that was the right asset for you to get. I don't know. It's done already.
Yeah.
So before the ink is dry, before you've even signed anything, I think that it's good to start early.
I completely agree with you. And for those of us who've joined and who, I get that the family home is usually one of the biggest assets that any, couple, any family has when they're going through a divorce. But the last thing you want to do, and I know there's an emotional component to it for a lot of people, you've put your hard work, blood, and tears, you've created a home, maybe all of your resources are in your neighborhood, your kid's school. But before you agree to kind of take on any large financial commitment after divorce, you really do need to do financial planning before. There's a post on my blog, 4 questions you need to answer if you want to keep the family home, for those who are at the beginning of this process and educating yourself, which is always the best way to start. I will say that, Josephti, like, I work with clients who I actually send to Josephti. I'm always recommending you early, like when I am prepping clients, right?
Yeah.
It has great partnership in terms of me getting everybody ready and then them booking consultations with you moving forward. And I'm excited to tease that Josephti and I are actually building out a package where you get the 2 of us at a much more reasonable cost than normal. That will be launching in the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And then, when you're kind of juggling 2 roles, right? You're a CDFA, but you're also a wealth management advisor. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, that you are credentialed in both those areas. You're not a coach. You weren't just certified to do what you do. You've been immersed in the industry. You know the ins and outs, as opposed to just kind of the surface, social media chatter about everything. Right. How does this dual expertise really help protect someone's financial future beyond just getting through a divorce settlement?
So the way I view when I help clients through a divorce is I'm really looking long term for you, right? Yeah. Just like the 5-5-5, right? So I'm a financial planner also. So I help clients should they want to be helped through divorce and beyond divorce. It's like, let's leave that divorce behind you and let's start this new life and get you on solid financial footing and get you living a new life that you're going to love and appreciate. So I look at it from both ways. Let's get you through this divorce fairly, equitably, and realistically. And then beyond that, okay, what are you going to end up with? Let's maximize that so that you'll be able to have fun with your kids, retire someday and not be financially scared anymore and be more financially empowered going forward.
I completely agree. And as much as I say, all across social media that divorce is really an opportunity, right, for deep introspection, to be able to kind of set the foundation for what your life is going to look like after divorce. And I find that it's a really important component to focus on as early as
Yeah.
possible, because when you do that, you create a North Star for yourself that you can kind of draw a line to at every point during the divorce process. There's a bigger thinking of everything, which is why working with, a divorce prep coach, as well as a CDFA, a wealth management advisor, a financial planner, doing these things are foundational for your life after divorce. We're not here just to help you during the divorce process. We're giving you the blueprint for then your life after, so that you understand what your budget is, you anticipate any kind of gaps that you're going to have, or in advance, so that you're not panicking. And also, when it comes to finances, it's a really good time to start identifying what brings you joy and
Yep.
where you spending that you should be cutting back, because it's not perhaps a necessity, but it's also not a priority.
Mm-hmm.
There's an emotion when it comes to money, especially when you're going through a divorce. Everything is triggering. you know Emotions are running high, right? So what kind of smart financial advice would you give somebody who is kind of feeling overwhelmed by the whole financial and asset splitting aspect of the divorce process, if they're feeling just overwhelmed by those big feels?
Take it one step at a time. I mean, part of another person is part of the divorce team is a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I leaned heavily. I leaned heavily on my therapist at the time because I just needed to spill my guts out, whether it was rational or irrational, logical or illogical. You know what? Who cares? Let's not even judge
Yeah.
ourselves. Let's not let other people judge us. Let's just spill our guts to someone that's there to help us.
Yes.
So that's how I helped me. Another
Mm-hmm.
way to help yourself not be as overwhelmed is, just take it one step at a time. So, what are you spending today? Right? You could take 30 days, 45 days, and just track every single day. Okay, what did I spend my money on today?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to piece together a 1 month budget in an hour.
Yeah.
Right? So track it over 45 days if you need to.
Yeah.
One day at a time, 5 minutes.
I
Things like
love that you said that.
that.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a part of the work that I do, which is helping people
Mhm.
kind of break things up, break tasks up into manageable to-do lists and stay accountable, because yeah, it is all overwhelming. And here's the news. Like, you don't have to be an expert in everything. All you have to do is take one little step. Even by
Yeah.
watching or listening to this conversation, you're already investing in educating yourself and trying, and that's part of it, right? So that's a huge victory. Celebrate those small victories,
Yeah.
because they really add. And your best investment is always going to be yourself, whether that's again, working with a coach, working with a CDFA. These things are going to benefit you long term. And also, when it comes to the emotional side of things, making sure that you're addressing it and separating it from the financial side, and have the appropriate person to talk to about each area, right?
Yep.
Your attorney is not a therapist, and they're not a coach, so don't treat them as such, because they're going to bill you like an attorney.
Yeah. Yeah. Go to them about legalities.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Your CDFA is not going to be able to kind of walk you through what the divorce laws are, but they are going to have you educated about your financial realities and what your goals are in terms of the negotiation, so that you're making smart choices. I've got somebody dropped in a question that I just want to get to. If a spouse is giving you the house as a part of the settlement, do you consider capital gains when sell, commission, and cost of renovations needed to sell when determining how much the house is worth? Okay, so I'm going to say that do you have to take into consideration all of those, past expenses, renovations and such? Um, that you're going to need to sell if you want to sell down the line to kind of figure out what the house is worth? I'm hoping that's what it is, because it's a little
Well, I
confusing.
think in terms of capital gains and things like that, that is something that I talk to with my client or clients. So I can either work with the individual or the couple, and we can talk about that. So if you live, for example, in Los Angeles and you've lived in your home for, I don't know, 10 years, you probably have more than a $500,000 capital gain, right? So is it advantageous for you, for one person to take the whole house and lose 250,000 of those capital gain exclusions, only to find out a year later that you can't afford the house? So these are the types of things that we talk about together, because that's kind of what happened to me. I was like, I'm going to take this house, I can afford it. And then 5 minutes later, after his name was off of the title, I realized, like, I might have to sell this, and now I've lost my half of that capital gains exclusion. So that's actually something I help clients work through and decide, like, okay, is this a good idea? Is this not? Is there a possibility that we might want to keep the spouse on just for technicalities, just for this exclusion for a year, 2, 3? So that is all part of the discussion.
Okay. I love that that is the example that you used. And thank you, Nana, for dropping the capital gains question in. It's such an important one when we're talking about keeping the family home after divorce. And this is exactly why I send clients to Josephti for consultations while we're doing our work at this point in time. And why, if you're at this point, read 4 questions you need to ask yourself if you want to keep the family home on my blog, because you just get offered up a really creative solution, you know, even by suggesting something like, maybe there's a world where you keep your ex on, but it's written in the judgment, I've paid them out, they no longer have ownership, but it benefits you, it protects you from that capital gains tax, from the exposure. That kind of underlines something I'm always talking about. Divorce is one big negotiation, and being able to think creatively of how you're approaching that negotiation is the name of the game to get an outcome you want. And I think a lot of people, look, I do a ton of consultations with clients, right? And that's one of the things that I find time and time again. People just think that their attorney is going to lead them, or their mediator is. You need to be an active participant in gathering information so that you become your own best advocate. And for the person who dropped that question in, I'm going to be linking Josephti in this conversation immediately after we wrap, so you can book a consultation with her just to go a little further in if you have a little more questions. Another question that we received is, what tips could you provide for a settlement that is less than half of a typical home buyout amount? Some horse trading on assets.
I am not following that question.
I would say same. And so if that person wants to drop it in again, I think that would be really great. I mean, here are the questions I have when I see a question like that. So tell me why it's less than half the typical home buyout, right? What agreement did you come to where perhaps you're getting something? I mean, my hope is then there was some agreement of like, okay, well, I'm going to have part of a pension, or I'm going to have part of a 401k rollover. Like, that goes back to the creative solutions that Josephti and I were talking about, right? So we just need a little more. That's assuming what horse trading on assets is.
Okay.
Like, you just want to make sure that in the long run, all assets are equal, right? And so I do love that.
Or equitable, depending on the state.
But
that doesn't mean splitting every single asset in half.
No.
So that's where the creativity comes in. Maybe you get more of one thing versus the other. It doesn't have to be 50% down the line so that everybody has the same number of accounts. That's like, maybe you keep this account and I keep this account.
Yeah. And I love that. And so I'm assuming that's what the horse trading, reference is. One last question. Of course, we blew through our 20 minutes. For anybody who wasn't able to join us at the top of this, I'm Alex Beatty, a divorce prep coach, and I am talking with Josephti Cruz, founding partner, CDFA, wealth management advisor of the Wealth Garden. And just to wrap things up, today's really been about working with the CDFA, what that person does, you know, and on top of that is Josephti has all these other, you know, credentials under her belt that help you not only through a divorce, but really for financial planning long term, as well as for retirement and investments. It's like, especially if you're going to be splitting up these big ticket assets. I'm talking about pensions. I'm talking about 401ks. You know, I have clients that, you know, we're stay-at-home moms, right? And
Yeah.
so when I'm working with them and they're going through a divorce settlement, I'm talking about you are, you know, depending on their situation, here's what you're entitled to, and here's why it's important for you to take, you know, a certain amount from that retirement account that's being divided up and to
Mm-hmm.
roll it into your own. It's like all of these things really add up. I just had somebody drop in. I'm in Texas. My soon-to-be ex wants to keep the house, and he will get a HELOC and maybe some cash out of retirement to pay me off. I suggested holding until rates come down. Does this sound like a good plan? Now, I'm going to hand this over to Josephti with the caveat that this is not binding legal or financial advice because we don't have all of the details. It's just a general answer. Go ahead, Josephti.
Well, I guess my initial comment is that's very nice of you to offer that, but at the end of the day, it's like, do you trust him to do it later? Because I don't know. It could be amicable now and not amicable later.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client and a friend that the mortgage is under her name. I'm not sure the ex-husband has still refinanced because it was the opposite. The rates went up. So he kept holding off on refinancing, and now what? She's still holding the mortgage, even though he owns the home.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that real world example. And I would just piggyback on that saying, whatever you agree to, it needs to be in the judgment.
Yeah.
That way, over time, memory fades. Over time, people move on, even in the most amicable situations. They have new partners. They want to go and get a home. Make sure that you are, and I've worked with clients on this and had detailed information in their judgments, like if come stuff, here's what we're agreeing to. Here, by a certain date, we need to talk about this person is because that's binding.
A hard deadline. Because
Exactly.
you're being generous by saying, hey, maybe you can wait till rates are lower for you. Well, he's trying to pay you off, right? But what if the rates don't go down for 4 years? Are you still going to be patient at that point? So it just depends.
Details. If you have more questions, please book a consultation with me or Josephti. Cheryl dropped in. Can you negotiate assets that are hidden even if they are all not found? Love this question. Go ahead, Josephti.
Well,
Love it.
We have to find them.
End of conversation. Yeah. We have to find them. There is so much talk. And actually, I'm going to go back to my blog. If you go to the blog under interviews, Josephti and I had a conversation all about how to find hidden assets during divorce. There's a lot of work you can do, and it's all in that blog post to kind of start to suss out what's there. But no, you can't negotiate what you don't know, right?
See. Yeah, we need to see it. That being said, I think we talked about it in that prior interview. Most of the time, people are not hiding assets on purpose. So again, if you want to try to stay on the amicable side, maybe try to keep that in mind first. I mean, lots and lots of people go through job changes constantly. And I think some of those hidden assets are actually forgotten 401ks, right? Just as an example. So sometimes people hide stuff on purpose. Alex, you would say that you would agree too, I think, that most of the time people don't hide it on purpose, but it needs to be found to be negotiated.
100% agree. And I will say, even of all of my clients, you know, what some people consider hiding is stuff that they don't, like you said, aren't aware of. And that's really, really true. If you have a spouse who's in the corporate world, there are kind of, you know, so many different things built in, whether it's bonuses or it can be, you know, vested or not yet vested stocks, or it can be, you know, there's a myriad of things. So again, this is why having a conversation with professionals outside, not just your divorce attorney, but financial professionals like a CDFA, like Josephti, is so important, so that you can kind of go through your checklist to see. But I would say, no, you can't negotiate assets that are hidden because you don't have all the information, and that needs to come out during the financial discovery process. And if it doesn't, you know, there are some sleuthing things that you can do. check that interview with Josephti on my blog, how to find hidden assets. And I also have another post about it, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, please don't agree to anything if you don't know everything that you actually are entitled to. Dallas followed up about that mortgage and the horse trade, mortgage is under him only. Thanks. Yes. All details with deadline. Agree. Thanks again. You are so welcome. Josh dropped in. Don't wait for those rates to go down lower. There's no guarantee. Totally agree. Completely agree. Cheryl just asked, where's the blog post? If you head over to the link in my profile, you're going to see my link tree, and it's going to, I think it's the second or third, it's going to say the blog. So just click that. And then another subheading is interviews. Check it out. Okay, so another dropped in, and then we're going to wrap up because this has been so great. But again, I'm divorce prep coach, CDFA. Today's guest is Josephti Cruz. And just so you know, she and I are building out a formal package that we're launching next month, and the stakes couldn't be higher for you during divorce. So by investing in preparing in advance and having that financial planning component as a part of it is really your insurance for making all the right moves during your divorce negotiation and setting the foundation for what your life is after divorce. So I dropped in my case, I am more financially stable and making more than my husband. Do I need to pay spousal support? Is this also negotiable? I'm going to jump in really quickly and just take this. Look, the laws vary state by state.
Yeah.
I want to start by saying, number two, the person that you really need to ask is a local family law attorney so that you're familiar with what the laws in your state are. Having said that, yes, of course, depending on what the laws in your state are, there's wiggle room for negotiating on spousal support as well. One of the biggest things is, if you are required by your state to pay spousal support, the difference between ongoing monthly payments or proposing a one-time lump sum buyout. You want to check out what, if any, tax, implications there are, but hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yeah, it depends on the states. Some states don't have spousal support, period. It just
exactly.
depends.
Exactly. So Cheryl said, thank you so much, of course. And then I know I'm racing through, Josephti. I know, I have to get back to work, but holding another comment, having a hard time getting pension I'm going to say pension info from his company. Wife, can I request the pension and financials from his company? Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. You should be working with a quadra specialist, right? A quadra specialist is somebody who, if there are pensions involved and other retirement accounts, that's a person who comes in and they are going to assess what is split between the two parties, as well as, projected values. And they submit their report, which is a part of the judgment that gets filed. And because of that, that tells those institutions, that's then sent to the institutions,
right,
so that they have their legal instructions to split those accounts, number one. And now I'm going to let you jump in, Josephti.
Well, I was going to say, I can calculate that stuff too. And then the quadro specialist, from my understanding, is the one that writes out the document to send to the pension. But I'm wondering if the question is referring to, I can't even get the information from my spouse about the pension. I think you have to probably go through your attorney to kind of make sure that you do get it.
And that should be a part of your, the financial disclosure process that you spouse are going to go through. What I also love about this question is, you are obviously keeping a list of what you can't get your hands on. That's something that I do a lot. I think that you can feel overwhelmed if you're just starting the process. This is where I specialize. What do I need to get? What are assets? How do I list them? Go over to my website. I walk you through exactly what you need to get. My whole foundation of my coaching practice is I help you gather all the administrative stuff necessary, help you go through the financials so you have everything in hand necessary to hand over to a divorce attorney or a mediator for them to start working on your case. And when it comes to what you get access to, what you have is just as important as what you don't have, and just finding, keeping a running list of that. So I'm so glad you dropped that question in. you know, when you do that work, right? When you do that work, then when you go see Josephti, a CDFA, you hand them the same information. And at least on the attorney side, how that benefits you is a few ways. First of all, it's going to cut way back on billable hours
Yeah.
because you've already done everything necessary to hit the ground running. Number one. Number two, it activates you to become your own best advocate because you've taken the time to go through everything in advance of starting the process, which puts you in a position to guide the process more. So you're a bit more control of it. And third, it's like you're never going to, you know, not benefit from educating yourself and stopping to say, here are my questions. I understand this. I don't understand this. I want to get you comfortable in that, which is another reason I wanted to have you on today, Josephti, because you are another key element in this whole process.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And
going to go.
I'll definitely coach you. And Alex does the same thing too in our
Mhm.
different areas on, okay, so this is the storyline. This is what your finances are telling me right now. This is what looks realistic. What are your questions? What are your hopes? Can we do that or can we not do that? And I think that's really empowering to just know so that
Agree.
you're not just sitting there with your attorney not really understanding or feeling uncomfortable because you're just not sure. Like we want you to understand and know what's going on with your finances so that you could stand there confident during the
And
proceedings.
if you are watching this and thinking to yourself, yeah, but I didn't handle the finances during my marriage. I don't know anything. You are exactly the person we're
Yeah.
talking to.
Yeah.
We can empower you. It's not as hard as you think. We can walk you through exactly what to do. Again, start with my website, link in my bio. I walk you through everything you need to do to prepare. Josephti is going to be linked in this conversation. I'm wrapping it up right now only because we've blown through 30 minutes and I have a hard time. What did I do? But Josephti, thank you so much for joining me today. Josephti Cruz, founding partner, CDFA, the Wealth Garden. I am so excited that you and I are going to be working together
Thanks.
formally within the next month. I think, you know, again, for all my ladies out there, please know this doesn't have to be overwhelming. This doesn't have to be something you have to do by yourself. And yes, the stakes are high, but the support that we can offer and that's available to you out there is real. Take advantage of it. Invest in yourself and invest in your future. Josephti, thank you so much for your
Thanks
time
again,
today.
Alex.
No problem. I'm just going to hop off after 1 second. Somebody dropped in. Do you think marriage counseling first helps? Or if you know, you know. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Coming to the decision of whether I should stay or go in my marriage is, you know, such a big decision. There is another blog post that I have, which is if you're at a point where you're considering a separation or divorce, there are 18 questions for you to answer. And I'm going to be talking to Betsy Paik next month all about, she specializes in helping women decide if it's time to stay or go. So please subscribe to my newsletter. It's free. That'll keep you up to date on who I'm talking to and when. And you should join us for that live because we're going to walk you through everything. Thank you, Giuseppe.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. See you
All right,
later.
thank you.